Forget the cozy family dinner. Thanksgiving is a polite lie masking a historical reel of sheer absurdity. Historians polish this chaos to protect national pride. We are talking about launching blazing poultry, adopting dinner as a house pet, and dropping birds from airplanes. Watch this and you won't ever look at your holiday table the same way. Be warned. 1. To solve a simple family drumstick shortage, a father sewed a dozen extra legs onto a single roasted turkey. A multi-legged poultry centipede emerges from the smoking oven, dripping hot grease onto the floor, terrifying small children just so everyone gets a piece of dark meat. He bioengineered a grotesque horror movie monster to bypass a minor dinner table dispute over who gets the good cuts. He played God with a needle, thick butcher thread, and dead fowl, mutating the holiday centerpiece into a giant spider-like monstrosity. The youngest kids shriek and dive under the table. The visiting relatives stare in stunned silence. The host proudly stands over his unnatural creation, wielding a carving knife. It's sheer madness. Would you eat a 14-legged turkey? 2. Millions of viewers missed the sarcasm of a casual late-night joke by Johnny Carson in 1973, sparking an actual nationwide toilet paper shortage. They swarmed local supermarkets the next morning, hoarding two-ply rolls like valuable post-apocalyptic currency. Shoppers fought physically in the grocery aisles, trampling each other to secure a lifetime supply of soft tissue. He crashed the national supply chain of bathroom paper using only a televised punchline. Carson delivered the ultimate influencer flex, forcing panicked citizens to empty retail store shelves out of sheer terror over a fictional crisis. Managers watched helpless as angry mobs cleared out the paper goods. People lost their minds. A clean sweep. 3. Benjamin Franklin passionately hated the bald eagle and lobbied hard for the turkey to become America's official national bird. He defended a territorial, waddling ground bird as the ultimate symbol of courage, trashing the majestic eagle as a lazy thief with bad morals. The founding father sat in serious congressional meetings, demanding respect for a creature that spends its days gobbling at loud noises and chasing children. Envision the alternate reality where the United States dollar bill features the exact same bird currently stuffed with seasoned breadcrumbs on your dining table. He wanted soldiers marching into brutal battle under the proud banner of a fat, flightless dinner item. Foreign diplomats would salute a roasted centerpiece. History dodged a bullet. 4. The 1924 Macy's parade skipped the inflatable balloons and marched live, stressed-out zoo animals through the crowded Manhattan streets. Families casually watched a holiday spectacle while physically dodging a confused elephant, a roaring tiger, or a kleptomaniac monkey. Handlers dragged huge lions and snapping bears past screaming toddlers and nervous parents on the cramped concrete sidewalks. They engineered a public safety nightmare, releasing an unpredictable urban safari into a major shopping district right before the busy holidays. Children expected whimsical magic, but they received a terrifying front-row seat to untamed beasts experiencing sensory overload amid honking cars. Chaos reigned everywhere. Would you bring kids to a bear parade? 5. A desperate company in the 1970s invented an aerosol spray meant to make a home smell exactly like a fully cooked Thanksgiving feast. Instead of nostalgic aromas, eager buyers sprayed their houses with a toxic chemical fog that smelled like phantom television dinners mixed with harsh industrial bleach. Housewives walked through choking clouds of synthetic gravy vapor, coughing while trying to trick arriving guests into believing they spent 10 hours sweating over a hot stove. The brand birthed the perfect camouflage product for a host who wants their living room to smell like an active culinary crime scene. They bottled the distinct stench of domestic desperation and sold it over the counter to lazy cooks. Nobody was fooled. It reeked of lies. 6. Jingle Bells originally debuted in 1857 as a Thanksgiving song about fast winter sleigh rides, holding zero connection to Christmas. A simple secular novelty tune meant for a boring November Sunday school concert accidentally brainwashed the entire planet into associating it exclusively with Santa Claus. Small children sang about dashing through the snow to eat roasted bird, unaware they were launching a giant global winter anthem. Christmas violently hijacked Thanksgiving's only catchy hit single, stripping away the autumn context and pasting on red suits and reindeer. The Winter Holiday Cartel committed the ultimate case of intellectual property theft, leaving November without a single recognizable theme song. Thanksgiving lost the music war, a tragic theft. 7. Delusional organizers claimed heavy meat-bred birds could gently glide, while gravity quickly turned them into plummeting feathered sacks of cement. For 60 years, an Arkansas town celebrated the holiday by throwing live domestic turkeys out of low-flying airplanes. Spectators cheered from the ground as confused poultry plummeted from a soaring Cessna, desperately flapping their useless wings before smashing hard into the dirt. The town leaders forced a brutal lesson in terminal velocity disguised as a quirky, folksy regional tradition. They transformed flightless farm animals into doomed paratroopers without parachutes, traumatizing the birds and entertaining a cheering crowd of ruthless locals. I'm not making this up. Gravity always wins a fatal drop. Gravity. 8. A giant culinary marvel defying the laws of physics suddenly detonated into a sticky, car-sized swamp of orange mush. Ambitious Ohio bakers built a 3,600-pound, 20-foot pumpkin pie that violently collapsed under its own immense weight. Panicked cooks watched in despair as the delicate structural integrity failed, sending a tidal wave of spiced pumpkin and shattered crust flooding across the public festival grounds. They proved that baking past a certain size stops being cooking and instantly becomes a hazardous structural engineering disaster. The creators needed a skilled team of architects, not pastry chefs, to contain the dessert before it breached containment and ruined the day. It broke the pavement. A delicious tragedy. EII? 9. Now, in 1989, dedicated animal rights activists held a solemn public ceremony at the United States Capitol to officially canonize a live turkey. Bemused tourists stopped taking photos, watching earnest protesters elevate a highly confused, gobbling bird to glorious holy sainthood. They draped the frantic animal in symbolic reverence, chanting deep prayers over a creature whose primary instinct is to peck at shiny objects on the ground. The furious activists staged a piece of bizarre political theater that temporarily made a piece of poultry the most revered religious figure in Washington. They crowned a simple barnyard dweller as a divine martyr, demanding the nation fall to its knees before a feathered deity. God save the bird, a ridiculous spectacle. 10. While the entire nation feasts, the president sits alone in a quiet, empty office, furiously working and cursing his slacker citizens. President James K. Polk angrily complained in his private diary that Thanksgiving was a ridiculous waste of time that suspended crucial government business. He became the historical embodiment of that one toxic corporate boss who sends urgent spreadsheets on a national holiday. The miserable commander-in-chief refused to eat pie, choosing instead to draft tedious legislation and seethe at the thought of regular people enjoying a day off. Polk hated joy, despised relaxation, and treated a festival of gratitude like a personal insult to his grueling productivity metrics. Think about that for a second. He hated joy, a miserable boss. 11. The president preaches mercy on live television while the alternate bird is ruthlessly shoved into the presidential oven just down the hall. The famous presidential turkey pardon is a cynical sham. While one lucky bird gets public relations immunity, an unpardoned understudy turkey is simultaneously butchered for the official White House dinner. The administration pulls off a masterful political magic trick where feel-good media optics distract from an active poultry assassination. They smile for the rolling cameras, pet the chosen survivor, and secretly execute the backup candidate behind closed doors to feed the staff. It's a ruthless game of feathered roulette where second place guarantees a one-way ticket to the roasting pan. No mercy allowed. A brutal cover-up. 12. Organizers of the 1927 Macy's Parade didn't know how to deflate their very first giant balloon, so they just let it fly away. The majestic Felix the Cat drifts off into the overcast sky, violently colliding with high-voltage telephone wires and exploding over the panicked city. They executed a brilliant logistical plan that ended less as a gentle farewell and more as a spectacular public execution by utility pole. The beloved cartoon feline turned into a fiery rubber shrapnel bomb, raining burning debris down onto the screaming parade watchers. Instead of pulling a simple plug, the genius parade directors chose to let physics and raw electricity handle the cleanup process. A stunning failure of logic. How do you lose a giant balloon? 13. Government propaganda desperately hyped up a steaming, foul-smelling fish as the ultimate centerpiece of patriotic gratitude. During the Great Depression, the Roosevelt administration tried to persuade Americans to replace expensive turkey with cheap, oily mackerel. They launched the ultimate public relations flop, proving that even a starving nation will refuse a rebranded depression fish. The government expected proud citizens to gather around the dining table, hold hands, and carve into a greasy pile of pungent ocean bottom feeders. Families flat out rejected the marine substitution, preferring to eat bread and potatoes over a sad slab of fish masquerading as a festive luxury. Roosevelt underestimated the stubborn American appetite. Fish is vile. Nobody cared. 14. Confident suburban dads inadvertently create terrifying napalm fireballs that instantly vaporize their wooden decks and garages. Dropping frozen turkeys into boiling oil makes Thanksgiving the peak day for explosive home cooking fires in America. It fuels a predictable annual holiday tradition built on a toxic combination of culinary overconfidence, flammable oil, and a blatant disregard for basic physics. Amateur chefs lower icy poultry into vats of superheated grease, triggering volcanic eruptions that immediately summon the local fire department. The quest for crispy skin transforms quiet neighborhoods into active war zones, sending proud fathers running for the garden hose as their patio furniture melts. Melted plastic everywhere, a fiery disaster. 15. Families stop their joyful dinner to load a fragile bone into a complex metallic vise just to prevent cheating. An actual patented apparatus exists solely to hold a wishbone in place, so two people can snap it with mathematically equal force. The inventor birthed a monument to over-engineering that strips all the organic joy out of a harmless tradition using cold, hard mechanics. Instead of laughing and pulling a greasy bone by hand, paranoid relatives calibrate a metal contraption to ensure clinical fairness. They militarized a tiny piece of bird skeleton, turning a silly superstitious game into a serious laboratory experiment. Nobody trusts their cousins anymore, so they rely on cold steel to distribute luck. Trust is dead, the machine wins. 16. Before Halloween became a giant, Thanksgiving involved children dressing as dirty tramps in face paint to beg for coins and candy. Instead of watching football, adults spent the day being harassed by hordes of disguised, demanding kids banging loudly on their front doors. A bizarre historical era forced the holiday into a terrible identity crisis, where it briefly cosplayed as a secondary trick-or-treat syndicate. Packs of ruthless street urchins wandered the neighborhoods, shaking down innocent citizens for pocket change before returning home for pumpkin pie. The Festival of Gratitude morphed into a citywide juvenile extortion racket, terrifying homeowners who just wanted to digest their meals in peace. Should we bring back Thanksgiving trick-or-treating? 17. A creature intended for a roasting pan gets a custom diamond collar and free rein to terrorize diplomats at fancy state functions. President Calvin Coolidge was mailed a live raccoon meant to be cooked for dinner, but he adopted the vicious furball instead. Long before public relations turkey pardons, a raccoon executed the greatest escape room maneuver in political culinary history. The feral trash panda roamed the White House halls, biting nervous staffers and clawing expensive furniture while the president treated it like genuine royalty. The intended main course manipulated the leader of the free world into providing luxury housing and premium snacks. She traded a hot dinner plate for a penthouse suite. A true mastermind. 18. A single human inhales the equivalent of an entire small turkey faster than it takes to scroll through a short social media feed. In competitive turkey eating, the record is devouring 9 pounds of solid meat in exactly 10 minutes. Forget the marathon of polite family feasting. This guy became a finely tuned industrial machine of terrifying mass consumption. Joey Chestnut systematically dismantled a mountain of roasted flesh, ignoring standard table manners, chewing past the cartilage, and defying the biological limits of the human stomach. He turned a slow, appreciative holiday meal into a brutal, high-speed meat grinder operation. The audience watched a man conquer a dead bird through sheer jaw power alone. How much meat can you physically eat? Can oika? 19. A poor bird uncontrollably cranes its neck toward the sky due to severe genetic spasms while onlookers laugh, assuming it's just phenomenally stupid. The famous myth that turkeys stare up at the rain until they drown is actually a symptom of a rare neurological disorder. Society collectively gaslit a tragic medical condition into the ultimate punchline to crown a bird as the undisputed idiot of the animal kingdom. Farmers and citizens watched a helpless creature suffer a terrifying nervous system glitch and decided to ruthlessly mock it for generations. We took an avian seizure and wrote it into the cultural folklore as undeniable proof that our dinner deserves to be eaten. It's a cruel joke told by bullies. Humanity is ruthless. Humanity is. 20. While the entire nation stuffs their faces in gratitude, the founding father angrily sits in his study, rolling his eyes at the federal overreach. Thomas Jefferson flat out refused to declare Thanksgiving a holiday because he believed state-sanctioned prayer violated the Constitution. He staged a constitutional boycott of mashed potatoes, making him the most legally principled buzzkill in early American history. He alienated voters and ignored the festive cheer, all to prove a technical point about the separation of church and plate. He didn't rely on swords, shields, or a premium subscription to a VPN to fight tyranny. He just refused to carve a bird. He locked the doors and read a thick law book instead. He read alone, a legal boycott. 21. Hardened killers in the world's most brutal fortress sit down to beautifully garnished turkey and trimmings, courtesy of a fellow inmate. Mob boss Al Capone used his underworld influence to organize a full-blown Thanksgiving feast for all inmates in the inescapable Alcatraz prison. He executed the ultimate mafia flex, proving that even inside a damp concrete hellscape, the boss still dictates the catering menu. The legendary gangster bribed guards and manipulated the warden to ensure murderers and thieves received a 5-star dining experience behind iron bars. Capone transformed the grim dining hall into a mobster banquet, serving hot stuffing and pie to men who hadn't seen a real kitchen in decades. He owned the prison, a criminal king. 22. Treating a frozen, lopsided bird with the aerodynamic properties of a small boulder like a precision piece of sports equipment. A genuine sport exists where people hurl rock-solid, 15-pound frozen turkeys down suburban driveways to knock over plastic water bottles. It remains the only athletic event on Earth where you can hurl your bowling ball onto the concrete and then safely thaw it out for dinner. Drunk uncles and competitive teens swing a deceased animal by its frozen legs, sliding it across the icy asphalt to score a strike. The impact pulverizes the ribs, guaranteeing the meat will be beautifully tenderized by the time it reaches the roasting pan. What a grotesque display of dominance. Would you bowl with your frozen dinner? 23. If Scrooge had sent a turkey, the poor family would have been more confused than grateful. Staring at a strange dish meant only for royalty. In A Christmas Carol, Scrooge buys the Cratchits a goose because gifting a turkey in 19th century England was obnoxiously expensive. He didn't just buy a holiday dinner, he threw the keys to a brand new Ferrari at a starving family. A turkey cost more than a month's wages, turning a simple roasted bird into an obscene display of extreme wealth. The legendary miser bypassed practical charity and went straight for an arrogant billionaire flex, demanding the neighborhood acknowledge his sudden financial generosity through rare imported poultry. He bought their love, a wealthy show-off. 24. A crazed chef decides that a single bird isn't enough, systematically cramming dead animals into each other like a grotesque, meaty puzzle. The turducken is a deboned chicken, stuffed inside a duck, stuffed inside a turkey, created out of chaotic gluttony. It acts as a poultry nesting doll representing the Mount Everest of holiday cooking. You only assemble it to prove you legally can. The cook surgically hollows out 3 separate species and binds them together with seasoned sausage, constructing a towering monument to dietary excess. Slicing into it reveals a horrifying cross-section of interspecies slaughter that would make any sane vegetarian faint on the spot. It defies natural law, a grotesque feast. 25. Drunk college kids catapult a blazing, baby-clothed frozen carcass across a football pitch before the local fire department arrives. Indiana students invented a tradition where they dressed a frozen turkey in a tiny infant onesie, soaked it in lighter fluid, and set it on fire. They composed a symphony of terrible decisions that perfectly overlaps the Venn diagram of fire hazard, food waste, and sheer stupidity. The burning avian missile streaks through the night sky like a doomed meteor crashing into the turf and leaving a scorched crater of ruined meat. They turned a symbol of thanks into a flaming projectile of suburban chaos. Idiots with fire. It burned brightly. 26. Starving pilgrims cracked open bottom-feeding shellfish instead of carving the majestic golden bird we see in nostalgic oil paintings. Historical accounts reveal the mythical first Thanksgiving meal was actually centered around deer, lobster, and clams, with turkey mostly absent. The entire foundation of modern holiday marketing sits upon what was essentially a 3-day colonial seafood and venison barbecue. The desperate early settlers chewed on tough venison jerky and slurped down ugly sea bugs, which were considered literal peasant food at the time. Forget the picturesque spread of stuffing and cranberry sauce. The real ancestors survived on ocean scavengers and hunted deer meat cooked over muddy fire pits. Would you trade turkey for holiday lobster? 27. Serious suits pause active geopolitical security briefings to passionately debate whether tater or tot is a more dignified title for a bird. High-ranking government officials hold secret internal votes to pick idiotic names like mac and cheese for pardoned turkeys. It brings a comforting realization that the highest echelons of global power still operate with the pun-making maturity of a tired 5-year-old child. The sharpest minds in the country set aside nuclear strategy and economic policy to draft an official memo naming a clueless fowl peanut butter. They spend real taxpayer dollars organizing a fake election to bestow a ridiculous cartoon identity upon an animal destined to sleep in a petting zoo. Tax dollars at work. A childish game. 28. Instead of cheerful cartoon characters, traumatized children stared up at a floating demon toddler ominously drifting down Broadway. The very first giant balloon at the 1928 Macy's parade was a nameless, nightmarish humanoid with soulless eyes and a misshapen head. It caused an uncanny valley disaster that felt less like family entertainment and more like a severe psychological threat from the cloudy sky. The pale, bloated face loomed over the crowded city streets, haunting the fragile dreams of every young spectator who dared to look up at the shadows. Parade organizers essentially launched a paranormal entity on a thick rope, terrorizing the helpless public instead of spreading festive joy. Would this creepy balloon ruin your childhood? 29. Tens of thousands of 19th century students ditched their families to scream at organized violence in freezing New York stadiums. Long before the modern professional leagues hijacked it, Thanksgiving was the exclusive domain of gigantic, brutal college football rivalries. The holiday's unbreakable bond with traumatic brain injuries and turf wars was cemented a full century before lucrative television deals existed. Drunk undergraduates bundled in thick wool coats stood in the freezing snow, cheering as rival schools physically demolished each other on a muddy field. They traded warm cider and polite dinner conversations for shattered collarbones, bloody noses, and the roar of a ruthless crowd. Blood on the field. A savage tradition. 30. A stressed home economist cooks her own meal while simultaneously coaching a total stranger on whether a cat-slept-on turkey is safe to eat. The Butterball Turkey Talk line began in 1981 with just 6 women answering panicked culinary questions from their personal home phones. It proves that modern corporate empires often begin with a few chaotic landlines and a high tolerance for public stupidity. These brave operators talked hysterical cooks off the ledge, providing emergency psychiatric support to frantic people who tried to thaw a bird in a dishwasher. They fielded calls from crying adults who forgot to turn the oven on, serving as the last line of defense against widespread food poisoning. What's the dumbest cooking question you've asked? 31. 2 brave men sit in the dead, silent vacuum of outer space, sucking pulverized poultry out of a plastic foil bag. The first meal Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin ever ate on the moon's dusty surface was a pouch of freeze-dried roasted turkey. It proves that no matter how far humanity escapes into the cosmos, we will forcefully export our weirdest dietary traditions. They conquered the stars, planted a flag, and immediately celebrated by squeezing a gray, hydrated paste of meat into their mouths. Instead of feasting on a golden platter, the bravest pioneers in human history consumed a sad, squishy tube of astronaut rations, while floating in zero gravity. The cosmos didn't care about the gravy. Earth logic prevailed. A sad lunar meal. A sad 32. Anarchic mobs storm rich dining rooms with loud instruments, threatening to smash things unless they are handsomely bribed. Working-class youths in the 19th century formed fantastical parades, wearing grotesque masks to extort wealthy homes for booze and money. It marks a terrifying historical intersection where passing the gravy was briefly replaced by passing over your wallet in a purge-like scenario. Thugs wandered the streets in terrifying costumes, knocking on mahogany doors and demanding a ransom to leave the property intact. Elite families cowered inside their mansions, paying off masked teenagers with loose change and liquor just to survive the autumn evening. It was legalized robbery. Would you survive a Thanksgiving extortion riot? Listen to me. We have covered exploding balloon cats, mafia catering, children running extortion rackets, and astronauts eating meat tubes on the moon. You probably think it can't get any more ridiculous than that. But pause for a second. Look at your screen. Every single piece of insanity we just discussed still relies on the basic assumption that the holiday itself has a legitimate origin. I'm about to ruin the core memory of your elementary school history class. We crown an undisputed winner of historical madness right now. The greatest trick ever pulled was convincing us the starting line actually existed. What if the very rock this nation was supposedly built upon is nothing more than a third-hand lie told by an old man? Everything is a scam. Everything is. 33. Plymouth Rock is a total fabrication invented by a 94-year-old man a full century after the Pilgrims supposedly landed. The most sacred artifact of American courage is literally a cracked boulder fueled by a rumor. We celebrate historical truth by cutting into a dead bird based on a lie that never happened. It's all a fantastic myth. Drop fact 34 in the comments, or name the biggest idiot mentioned in this video. I'll pin the most unhinged response next week.